I'm seeing so many things that are extremely disturbing. I'm going to make a statement now.
Yeah.
You are a white guy. You understand the Boere. You're an observant guy. You look at what, let's just in a recent history. First, the statements that Prime Minister of Zululand made. And now, the King made the same statements. And you heard that professor.
Yeah.
And you listen to what Zuma is saying. And I said it in a Skidmarks, there's a lot of the Boere is very angry with me. And I said, I am seeing signs in the Zulu nation that reflects the attitude in the Boer nation in 1990, 92, 94. I see the same signs. Do you agree?
You know what? I think the Boere lost it before then. I think
Yeah.
they used to have a sense of self, which was eroded before 94. I think it eroded from the mid-80s, I'd say from late 80s to 95, that identity eroded completely. And,
but what I'm trying to say, Richard, is that the same drive that the Boere now have for self-determination.
Now, yes, now.
And we see the same signs in the Zulus.
Well, I think they're becoming more active. I think they're becoming more vocal about it. I think they're beginning to change the narrative about it. They're beginning to talk about it. And that's the leaders. When your leaders start changing the narrative, that's when things change.
That is when you need to start taking note of it and pay attention to what these guys are saying. Because, I said it a few months ago in one of my Skidmarks. I said, listen, you guys with your Cape Exit and Cape Independence and Break the Cape and all of that shit. Pack up your briefcases with all your paperwork and all your skills and all your knowledge and go to Ulundi. Get Zululand out of the Republic and you will get your Cape like that. And a lot of guys said I was crazy.
No, I don't.
But what is the reality? The reality is Zululand is Zulus. The Zulus is the majority of the nation. They 25 million. They've got one major thing in their favor. There's not much debate about where their borders are.
No.
So for them, and this is why I said it, and I think I don't know if I mentioned it to you, I am firmly of the opinion that the role of MK is specifically to get the ANC out of Natal. And once this election is done between the ANC and Inkatha, they're going to UDI. That's what I believe.
Between Umkhonto.
Yeah, MK and Inkatha. They're going to UDI. There's other reasons, more global reasons and international reasons for me saying that, because there's a large reality in South Africa is that the importance of the Cape Sea route is very important to the West and to BRICS.
Yes.
It's vital to them. But the West has got a fairly strong foothold in the Cape due to the DA and XXX and all of that. So they are not too uncomfortable about the sea route. But BRICS has got a major problem. If the West decides to grab the sea route, BRICS is 6 to 8 weeks away from responding because of the distance. Now, Russia does not have a foothold in South Africa. They don't have a foothold in South Africa because they don't trust the ANC. They've got a major issue with the DA, and the Freedom Front is null on a contract. They're null on a contract.
They're not players.
So the Russians are sitting there in Moscow and they're thinking about this, and they say, okay, but how the hell do we get that resolved? We need a foothold there. And they said, okay, wel vir Zuma, sy moet kom kuier. So Zuma go there. And he spends 3 weeks there. My information from contacts that I have is he was every day in the Kremlin, in the FSB offices, every day. Okay. So he comes back, and the next move he starts MK. So I asked around. They said to me, I said, okay, who's the secret hand behind MK? That's what I always want to know. Who is behind these things? And that one Zulu guy says to me, Russians. I said, okay. And the money? He said, the Russians. I said, okay. That explains a lot to me.
If you think about it, that would be an extremely interesting scenario. Let's say that the Zulus do that. And let's say that once they've done that, the ANC says, oh, well, we can't allow that. We're going to move in and we're going to take over. We're going to send the military in. Zuma picks up the phone and says, Putin, I need help. Hey?
I've got another. Here's something else. This is something else you need to consider. The Turkish power ship deal died.
Yes.
We know there's many reasons and many speculations, but it died.
Yeah, but you said the Russians took over that one. Yeah, you said that last time we were chatting. You said the Russians have taken over that.
Yeah.
And so, just remember, Zuma wanted to use the Russians to do the nuclear deal.
Yes. Okay, so if I am almost 100% sure, if Zuma decides, okay, we're going to UDI, the Russian ships will be on the horizon when he does it.
Yeah, obviously.
When he does it, within hours, Russian ships in Durban Harbor and in Richards Bay Harbor. And the ANC tried this lamlendige SADF, 1,000 Wagner guys with 50,000 Zulu impies will walk over them. They can't do. They don't have a chance. I said to the guys that I'm talking to, I said to them, the first thing that you guys must keep your eyes open for is watch out for the first signs that you see in Zululand, Wagner type operators there. And then the one guy said to me, with the fuck up there in Durban 2 years ago, there were 3 security companies of Russians in Zululand. What? I said, oh, they were, yeah. So, Richard, I am going to stick to my prediction. I have a very funny feeling that we're not going to have an election and that the country is going to break apart. You don't like the word balkanization. I use it as a concept. In the end, the result is going to be somewhere 12 to 14 regions. And these tribes are going to sort their problems out among one another. Confederations is going to be the way forward. That's it. Because another guy that I spoke to said, if the Zulus do UDI, they actually have South Africa by the nuts because they've got the 2 major ports.
Well, the main ports that feed the main, well, Gauteng, the main industrial area.
Yes, they've got it.
Yeah, and I mean you can't afford to bring things in from the Cape. It's too long a trip.
Yes.
It's just too far, and even the rail between here and the Cape is destroyed. Yes. Which means if the Zulus take over KwaZulu-Natal and they take over those 2 ports, the nearest port that we have is Maputo, and that isn't up to standard in order to handle the amount of traffic that is required to feed Gauteng.
The other problem is, I hear stories that MK is testing their popularity here in my region.
No, well, the Vaal, just remember the Vaal also.
Yeah, but they're testing it here. They're testing here in this area. And I said to the guy, why? And he said to me, the Swazi king has put in a land claim for this area because the Swazi king says that is boer land. The Swazi king made a deal with the Boere for that land, and now the ANC wants to steal it. So they want it back. Now imagine this. He goes, Zululand goes, and they take this section with them. Okay? What is on paper a reality? The bulk of the old Boer republics is under Zulu control. And you're sitting with a guy, Zuma, which does not deny the right of the Boere.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't.
He says, we can't deny it. Our kings made the deals with them. Here's the maps. And then another friend of mine, he's in discussions with the Tswanas, and he says to me, the Tswanas are talking to the Zulus. I say, what? And then another guy, which I don't want to name, he did a publication, he did a document, he called it the Mayuba Vision. And it entails a confederation of the old Babuta Tswana, the central area that is what that was at that stage under discussion for the Volksstaat, and Zululand, confederation between those three. Then they have got access to the sea,
minerals,
and
everything.
They've got everything. And you know, Richard, as I always believe, nature doesn't allow anything to be out of balance for too long.
Yeah.
Then it resets the thing. And I'm thinking that I might be lucky to, in my life still, see it. Because, you know, Richard, what is something that we have to keep in mind? Political, let me call it Boerans, a political fuck-up happens overnight. The guys are sitting at the table still today, and tomorrow morning there's nothing. And the system has changed. So if I listen to what the Zulus are saying, I can see, okay, there is a desire for them to get out of this fiasco. And if you listen carefully to what that professor was saying, he was highlighting every one of the hotspots. And you cannot debate with him on it because he's factual. It's just facts. Facts.
Yeah. There is no debate, it's a fact.
And you made a very good statement when you said the moment leadership starts talking, opinions change. And as I said to you, the thing that worries me the most, and I'm not worried, but I'm concerned, is the possibility of a civil war in Natal, because that will be a horrible disaster for the whole country.
Don't you think that the only reason you had that initial civil war is because you had a Zuma over there, which was strongly aligned with the ANC, because he was the main driver of that. I mean, he was head of this where he was head of the Secret Service of the ANC, basically. And I know that he was one of the major players internally when it came to disruption, especially in KwaZulu-Natal. Now, at that stage, they were fighting the IFP because the IFP was against this whole movement of the ANC coming in. And I mean, Zuma was an ANC supporter, but now that isn't there any longer.
Yeah, but now you see what my concern Zulu says to me is that there is historical issues, specifically Southern Natal, about what Inkatha did there. And he says he doesn't know how they're going to resolve that, because there's a lot of resentment there. And that is why
maybe two factions for initial. Two factions.
But I say Zuma has the key. He has the key. He's the guy that can maintain peace, or he's the guy that can start a war. He's got that power in his hands. The only thing that I am bargaining on is that he's got a line to Putin, because Putin will advise him against something stupid like that.
No, well, you see, one thing I must admit, I don't think that, you know, for the preservation of the Zulu nation, you can't afford a civil war.
Exactly.
That's your first decline will happen from that civil war, because you never end a civil war. It always festers, and which means it always reignites and reignites. So I think, I mean, if you have a proper leader there that recognizes that, and that recognizes that, yes, you can afford to have differences, but as long as you recognize those differences for the advancement of the nation, for the greater good, then you can get rid of those differences. You can work out those differences. So as a leader, that's how you've got to approach it. You've got to be able to say, don't be too worried about the power role. It's for the benefit of the people.
I've got a person
I think you can play that role. I think you can play that role, to be honest.
I've got a person that is, and I don't want to name her, that is well connected to the Zulus.
Yeah.
And she sent me a message the other night, and she said to me, have you noticed on the photographs of Zwelithini and Zuma? Take a good look at those photographs and tell me, what do you see? And I Googled the images and I looked at it and I couldn't really put my finger on it. And I said to her, okay, I'm looking here at about 20 pictures of the two of them together. And she said to me, look carefully. Zuma is always on the right-hand side of Zwelithini. And I said, okay, I see that. What's the cultural thing about that?
The trust position.
And she said, that's easy. That's his number one advisor.
It's a trust position.
Yeah. And then she sent me, I can't tell it. I'll tell you that offline, because if I do that, I'm going to give her identity away. In any case, the fact of the matter is, that is why, because Zuma is a traditionalist and he's a tribalist.
Yes.
And he will be against a tribal war, because he knows what it will do to his nation.
I mean, he has to be, because it's not going to be good for them.
It's not going to be good for the Zulu nation.
No.
And he knows it.
Yeah.
And that is why I believe that the rift between Zuma and Inkatha, that rift is going to narrow very quickly and very rapidly.
Well, look, you're going to get outside players.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Try and stoke that. You know it.
For sure. And this one guy said to me, they are fully aware that there's provocateurs operating in the Royal House.
Yeah.
And I said to him, okay, but now what are you going to do? And I said to me, relax. He's the guy that reminded me of Chaka's Rock. And he said to me, Chaka's Rock, you remember? I said, okay. Because the fact of the matter is, Richard, that what we have in South Africa cannot continue. No. There is no way that it can continue. The Republic has been broken beyond repair.
Completely.
It is currently
the chalice is poisoned. The chalice is poisoned.
Yes.
Whoever takes over ends up with a problem. You've got to create something new.
For sure. And
that's it.
I've said the other day, I can't remember if I mentioned to you or to someone else, or was it to Hein. The fact of the matter is, if, say for instance, a coalition manages to get the power position, the first day they walk into Parliament and they sit down and say, listen, guys, okay, we have it, we're here, let's talk about how to break this up into regions. That's what they should do. Because if they're going to try to retain the unit, they're going to be dead in the water. It will never work. And do we have that wisdom in the leadership? Richard, explain to me, what is your political position?
My political position?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Confederalist. And look, I've just come out of 10 years in government, where I had to be apolitical. Before I went in, I was part of the Christian Democratic Party. I was also a councillor in Tshwane Metro Council. But I've been very much involved in looking for a solution for South Africa. And I got involved with groups like the Nasionale Burgerraad and with ASK and groups like that. And I was part of the whole process of, we developed a think tank to come up with a solution for South Africa. And first of all, we did the SWOT analysis to see what would happen. And unfortunately, everything that we predicted has taken place. The systematic decline of the system and the eventual collapse. That's what we predicted. And our prediction says that when it collapses, because the power won't revert to a DA, that's not going to happen.
No.
That was never going to happen. It's not going to revert back to white control. Or white, and we were looking at purely on the basis of the white population. We weren't looking at any of the other groups at that stage, and we came to the conclusion that the only out for us was obviously self-determination, in order to just have some form of identity and all those aspects preserved. During that process, what I realized, though, that's a very selfish look at things, because what I realized is that the African is in the exact same position as the Afrikaner.
Exactly the same position.
We're all sitting in the same boat.
Yep.
In that we believe in our identity, we believe in our culture, but it is being undermined. I mean, to such an extent that even the Africans believe it's better for their kids to study in English than it is in their own mother tongue. I mean, imagine a German saying to his kids, you know what, you cannot study in German. You've got to go and study in an English school. I mean, it's ludicrous, because it's proven that is an absolute failure when it comes
to
education.
But that is what Poroshenko and Zelensky was trying in Ukraine.
Exactly.
Exactly the same thing.
Exactly, because that's how you undermine the education process of a group of people. Look at Africa. They're all studying in French, or they're studying in English, or they're studying in every language other than their own languages.
Yeah, I heard a story the other night that the Russians are now setting up Russian language centers in a number of African countries. And I asked the one guy that I talked to a lot about Russia, and I said to him, but what is the aim of that? Do they now want to Russify those countries? And he said, no. He said, the problem is these countries are sending their students to Russian universities. And those guys come there and they can't even say good morning.
No, so that doesn't help, yeah. But you see, the thing is,
it's not for us to overwhelm their language, but the problem is they want to study in Russia, and if they don't have a base grip on the Russian language, they cannot function in the communities at all. They can't even walk into a shop and order food.
But you see, Colleen, the difference is, if you look at mother tongue education, now it's been proven that mother tongue education, especially when it comes to maths and science, is of paramount importance. I mean, you see, the misnomer that's been spread in South Africa is because English is the language of economics, you must study in English. Rubbish. Just study English as a language.
Yeah.
You don't need to study in that language. I mean, it was interesting. I was speaking to a professor of law at Tux, Tux at one stage. And we were discussing this whole thing around language. And he said what he found amazing in the last while, that, the students come into Tux and now they end up actually doing law in English. They come from Afrikaans schools.
Yeah.
They then do law in English. They do their masters in English. But the minute they go to doctorate, they all want to go over to Afrikaans again, because your higher level of thinking is in your mother tongue.
Yes.
So
I mean,
it's
think back during the Homeland era.
yeah.
How successful the students were at those Homeland universities.
Oh, no, wait, you're lying now, because the ANC told us those were terrible universities. I mean, come on, let's be honest. Okay, they burned down most of them, so that would have had an impact. But no. But I guess Nelson Mandela and his law degree, I mean, he must have gotten it out of a lucky packet. And Cyril and his law degree, that must have been out of a lucky packet as well. You see, the lie's been permeated by the ANC for a very long time. The
But
whole
that
blaming education, that education was broken down by the ANC itself.
exactly.
And they
Because
showed their colors. They showed their colors. They showed their colors when they got into power. If they were so worried about education, when they got into power, they should have ensured that every school was uplifted and every school was able to teach proper education. The same as, give Robert Mugabe one thing. He created a good education system. Give him that. You know what I mean? They could have done the exact same. But what did they do?
I mean, at a stage, it was generally accepted that the Zimbabweans were the best educated Africans on the continent.
Yes. Now you got to give credit where credit is due. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's one thing you got to do. But one thing I can tell you, the ANC knew what they were doing when they said liberation before education.
For sure.
It wasn't about liberation. It
There's
was about
now
dumbing down society.
there's now a video doing the rounds about that famous Khrushchev speech of how to make a society communists.
Yeah.
And he gives the steps. You must have heard it. And if you look at all the steps mentioned there, someone sent me it in writing, and you go through those steps, and I think it's 9 steps, and you look at it, and all of those steps has already been done in South Africa. There's 2 steps that they're still working on, and that's the health issue and the education issue. And the NHI bill and the Bella bill is supposed to be the final nails in the coffin there.
Exactly. NHI makes it completely reliant on a state that is destroyed the health system.
Yes.
I mean, so it's please, Elaine, it's now
yeah, we've been going for a while.
It's time.
And I was on the point of saying to you, let's wrap it up. So I'm going to say my say, and that is that I'm not confident that we're going to have an election. Something is going to disturb that process. I foresee the strong possibility of KwaZulu-Natal seceding, not voluntary. Let's call it, but UDI. They can see the country is falling, and the other guys better get their act together and understand the base principle that all the tribes need one another. They need one another if they want to survive. And yes, I think that the signs that I see in Zululand gives me confidence that my view is not too outlandish. I think that me and you are in agreement that the unitary state has had its days. It's over. It's going to go one way or another. It can go peacefully or they can go violently, but it's going to go. And yes, and I really want to thank you for this discussion. This is one of the big things for me on my channel, is that people need to talk to one another so that we can understand what does the other guy think. How does he see these things? What would you say to the viewers?
Well, look, I'm going to agree with you that the unitary state has seen its day. I think we see it failing all over the world. That tyrannical rule that has taken place over these unitary states. The true colors have appeared and the true colors have revealed themselves, and it's not working. The liberal unitary state has also shown its true colors, and it is not working, because all it's done has systematically impoverished the middle class, and it's transferred the wealth from the middle class to the rich and to the small elite at the top. And unfortunately, the revolution always happens, you see, because the inevitableness of the fact is that when the people at the top become too greedy and they stop worrying about the people at the bottom, and they think they can control the people at the bottom through various mechanisms, that's when people rise up and say, well, enough is enough. But I don't think it's the people that actually do it. I think, like you said earlier, it's the natural order of things. The balance has to be brought back into play. There has to be a rebalancing of the system. And I believe that the rebalancing of South Africa is of such importance to Africa, because Africa has been unbalanced for a long time now, with the whole rule that took over Africa in the last 100 years. They were put into situations that were unnatural, where Zambia is sitting on 72 different groupings. So, it's an unnatural order. And we've seen what happened in areas where there's unnatural orders. War breaks out and there's conflict. It's this continuous upset because it doesn't feel right. People go to war when they don't feel right. And I believe that if you can arrest that not feeling right, then you don't need to go to war. If you can stop that from happening. Why do we see that? Well, the most stable society in Europe has been Switzerland, which has managed to devolve power and managed to give people a sense of belonging without the unit breaking up, without the unit falling apart. And I believe you can do that. If they've been able to do it, they are the example. If they've been able to do it, we can do it. If they've been able to make it right, we can make it right. Like I said, they started with 8 cantons. They're now 29. So it's a continuous devolution of power. So I believe that if we can do that in South Africa, we'll probably end up with more than just the 11, 15 little groups we have at the moment. We'll probably end up with 40, 50 different groups.
I believe you, and I agree with you on that, because I said to a guy the other day that if this thing breaks up, you must understand demographics is an important thing that you have to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And traditionally, the Boere is actually farmers, where they had vast tracts of land and they were far apart and they were not densely populated.
Yeah.
But that's because of their farming backbone.
Yeah.
What I foresee is that I did that Skidmark on Moerlampoer, and I don't know if you've ever heard it and so forth, but what I see is that you will have communities, 10, 12, 15, 20 farms together with a town in it, and they will form a canton.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether that canton is in Zululand or in Tswana or in Vendaland or wherever. These are the things where I see it's got to go naturally and practically.
Yeah.
There are some guys that are, I call them lunatics, that has got this vision of restoring the old Boererepublieke and all of that. It's never going to happen.
Now, you see, history passes. History is in the past. You got to look at the realities of today.
Demographics
of today.
Yes, today, not 20 years or 30 years or 50 years ago. Today, that is going to dictate a lot. And I will not be surprised if you get situations like, let's say the Tshwane Metro, that becomes a canton.
Well, I think to be honest, I think the Tshwane Metro, as you see it today, will break up into various cantons.
Yes. That's what I'm trying
Not
to
going to
say.
be one canton. I
Not
think
one.
like Johannesburg will break up into cantons as well. And I believe you're going to probably end up with more. You'll probably end up with a Muslim canton. You'll probably end up
Yes,
with and all these other permutations that might come out of this. But
and
you
this
know
is
what?
what I
Let it
said.
happen. Let it happen. Let it break down the central control system that doesn't work. Let it break down, but break down in a way where we're all helping each other. And you know what's amazing? You're going to create pockets of excellence
For sure.
based on what each group is best at.
Yes. I
So,
said it the other night. I said it to someone and I said, don't be surprised if there are some of these cantons that are pure dictatorial, because traditionally the black tribes, if they've got a headsman, they're happy. That's all they want. They want nothing else. They don't want anything more. That's it. And
well, you
and
see,
this is the
that's the choice of the canton. You see, that's the beautiful thing
exactly
about the canton. It's the choice of the canton.
for
It's the
sure.
people's decision. Look, obviously, that when you see your neighbor being wiped out by a dictatorial leader, you obviously want to turn to him and say, "Excuse me, but please don't do that to your people." You know what I mean? And you try and influence him not to do, because that would be the wrong thing. You know what I mean? But it is a matter of allowing people what they want. Is that not democracy?
For sure.
The rule of
Uh,
the people, by the people, no matter what they choose.
you refer us to Switzerland and so, but
Yeah.
look at Russia. 190 ethnic groups, 190, over 2,000 cultural groups. And those cultural groups, there are areas where those cultural groups, they are doing their thing as they've been
I
done
mean, you know what's
for
ironic?
ages.
You know what's ironic?
Yes.
Even the Jews were given an area for themselves.
For sure. I saw the other night there was a guy that I talk to a lot that lives in Russia. He sent me a link to it and he says, look at it. There's he says to me, because he's he's an ex-South African.
Yeah.
I say, that's a Jewish homeland, that's in Russia.
I mean, you see, so that is what we're talking about. We're talking about natural order.
Sure.
Are we not?
For sure. And, Richard, but I think the right-minded people allowed the liberals too much leeway for too long, and they screwed up everything. And a big problem today is the debt of different institutions.
No, you see that was utilized to destroy national wealth.
Yes, that is in Khrushchev's plan. He says that you kill them with debt.
Yeah.
And I mean, I spoke to a guy in Texas, and he said to me, you talk a lot about this $32 trillion overdraft that the federal government has. He says, what you don't take into calculation is the debt burdens on the different states, on the different cities.
No,
If you bring all of that together, it is humongous.
No, it's debt all the way through.
And he said to me that they are working in Texas on a digital dollar that will be gold backed.
Yeah,
and I
you
said,
mentioned
I said, but why are they doing that? And he said to me, because these people that are look, there's a strong secession movement in Texas also, and he says the guys in that operation, they are 100% convinced that the US dollar is going to crash and burn. And Texas has been buying gold like hell. Okay. So all of these things, back to that tribal stories. Those guys are beginning to understand, hey, we better fend for ourselves or we're going to be wiped out with a hole. We don't want to be part of that. And so, Richard, this was a fantastic discussion and talk. And what I like talking to you is that I can make outlandish statements. And you sit and you look at me, and then you start talking about it and how you view it. And that is the type of discussions that we need desperately. Just so that people understand, listen, two guys can have different opinions and they talk about these things and they're not, fighting or shooting or whatever. It's just a case of it opens up the doors for other options.
Ideas and cultures. That's it.
Have a great evening, and I thank you a lot.
Thank you. I really appreciate the conversation. It gets the brain working, and it gets the old thought juices going. And I mean, that's how new ideas are developed, and that's how things become a reality.
For sure.
Thank you very much, sir.